Hi everyone, welcome to a brand new episode of Zip to Success. So today we have someone who is one of the most known and one of the most trusted real estate advisor in South Delhi. And while doing our research, we came to know that whatever happens in South Delhi in real estate, their team is either a part of it directly or indirectly. So welcome, Mr. Dipesh. Welcome to Zip to Success.
So Anurag, thanks for such a loud statement. That's a little too loud, but yes, we understand South Delhi very well. South Delhi
Yes.
and Latin Delhi that flows in our DNA.
No,
That's the only.
you have been very modest all throughout this time, so we know that. So, but this points actually came up in the research when we were trying to gather some data about South Delhi.
Yeah, so okay, to some extent, what I would say is it's correct because we breathe South Delhi, we
Oh,
breathe
cha.
Lutyens Delhi. So we really want to, take something real estate in a South Delhi in a very, very informed manner.
Mhm.
So yes, we are consultants. Yes, we are advisors. But South Delhi is our core. Lutyens Delhi is our core, and
खून
that's
में आ
that's
गया
that's
साउथ दिल्ली
ha,
साहब.
ha, ha. So and that's the fun part of it.
Yes.
It's a passion. Frankly, it's a passion. It's not a profession, but more like a passion.
So starting with you, just give a brief introduction about you, एक थोड़ा सा so that audience know कि आपका क्या background है and how you ended up in the South Delhi and real estate industry.
So basically, it's an interesting question, close to my heart. Started my career in 2000 with an interesting brand, Cadbury's. Then moved
Oh.
on to Airtel. Then moved on to a short stint in logistics. So those were really something like professional stints. Moved on to real estate. A lot of people ask, chocolates to Airtel
Airtel.
Sims to logistics. So I always explain them that the core has been sales and marketing, and that has
Hmm.
always helped. Even in our functioning of South Delhi and Lutyens Delhi, that's helped us a lot because connecting with people, presenting yourself, all that makes it easy. And the good thing is that in our boutique market, it gets recognized very well. So it has been an interesting journey, all in all.
So you said it get recognized very well. So is it because of the geographically it's very condensed or people know in and around
No, so
what?
it is no. It is just about the personality trait. So there's no entry barrier. Anybody can become a consultant. Anybody can become a broker. So things, you being yourself a professional, you come out in a certain way. And when you are dealing with good educated people all around, so they recognize that yes, there's somebody who is a little more different than the run of the mill people. So that is the only point I wanted to make. So ours has been always a reference based business. So
Mhm.
people refer us, people feel that comfort, and that's what makes us grow.
So I always wanted to understand this concept कि if in case let's say I want to buy a house in South Delhi, so why can't I go and search any availability on the social media, or maybe I can go out directly to the builder, or I can find someone in the network that I have. Is it actually a important role of an advisor or a broker needed, or we can let it go and try to do it our own way? What is the actual right way to do it?
Okay, so basically the thing is, if you see, even with platforms like 99 acres, Magic Bricks coming upon, where you can really interact with the seller directly or a builder directly. So anybody still needs an advisor because the reason is that it's an interesting thing that there are a lot of emotions which are involved. But
Okay.
you would be surprised to know, and it's a very big statement. Even when somebody as a buyer goes on for buying a house, he is on a self discovery mode.
Like.
Like, for example, he himself is not clear that he is wanting to buy a floor in which colony, in which location, whether park facing, whether non park facing. A
Okay.
customer feels, a buyer feels that he is very clear that yes, I want to buy this particular lane, this particular floor. But eventually, being part of so many journeys in last 15 years, so it's very clear that the buyer, we have had classic examples. We had a very, very good case wherein a customer wanted to buy a house in Gulmohar Park. He was very clear that I want to buy a house in Gulmohar Park, Niti Bagh, etc., etc. And
Okay.
it was a journey of good 1.5 years. Eventually, the person landed up buying a 1,000 yard third floor with terrace in Shantiniketan. So, so the point I'm trying to make here is the buyer came with a different thought that no, I want to buy an individual bungalow. On the contrary, when he saw the colony infrastructure, saw the location, he ended up buying, rather than a smaller 200-yard or 300-yard house, he ended up buying a 1,000-yard single floor. So this is not just one example, but in 90% of the cases, when buyer, so for example, I would correlate with a very different example.
Mm.
You think that you would be going in a mall buying a specific color of shirt, but there when you see the things, basically you end up buying something very different, and this is a very normal human psychology. And it's that's the most interesting part, playing with that human psychology. It's not playing, but going through the process with that customer, in making him understand or making him discover that where eventually he likes, that we also don't know. Let me tell you that we also don't know. So that journey, in still a place like Delhi, South Delhi, there's a lot of broker support. That is just the emotional part of it. Further to add to your thought process, further to add to the thought process, it's also quite a few other operational nuances which are involved, which are legal, commercial, title issues. All that also an advisor helps. So an advisor's role is here to stay, specifically when these luxury segment buyings are happening, because there are a lot of emotions which are involved for a end user buyer.
Got it. So now, as you understand South Delhi very well, let's say someone has 50 crores and they want to buy a house in South Delhi. So, and they want to hold it for the next 15 or 20 years. Can you pinpoint or name which neighborhood or which colonies they should buy, and what should be the ideal location for them?
Okay, so so Anurag, you would be zapped to know that people think that any particular colony is a brand. For example, if
Okay.
you are sitting in Bombay and if you are talking about Vasant Vihar, anybody or everybody would know about Vasant Vihar, basically.
Right.
So the reason that it's a famous colony, and why it's famous, because it has more number of houses, basically. So, and also people feel that if I am wanting to invest, a new buyer who wants to invest, so he thinks that he would be buying a floor in Vasant Vihar and that would be a good investment. On the contrary, the thing is that South Delhi moves in a particular pattern. So it's more like a one big ship, basically.
Mhm.
So if one wants to generalize that no, buying a property in Golf Links is a good investment, buying a property in Vasant Vihar is a good investment, or GK1 is a good investment, that's a kind of a myth. It moves in a particular pattern. The whole South Delhi moves. So, for example, if one would have invested 50 crores today, and let's say 3 years down the line, if one wants to see his investment grow, basically, so it will move in a particular pattern. If GK1 grows by 10-15%, so would Vasant Vihar, so would these small Tony colonies like Gulmohar Park, Niti Bagh, which are lesser known
Lesser known.
names per se.
Okay.
So, also, I would add on to your question that people feel a colony is a brand, but that's not the case, because all these colonies have their own particular features. For example, anybody in India would know Greater Kailash 1. On the contrary, people wouldn't know colonies like Niti Bagh, Gulmohar Park, Anand Lok. These are much more premium colonies, but why colonies like GK1, Defense Colony, Vasant Vihar, Saket, these are famous because of their sheer size. To give you an example, a colony like Gulmohar Park would just have 200, 250 houses. On the contrary, places like Vasant Vihar, etc., they would have 1,500 houses. So that's why these colonies are much more famous and assumed to be brands, but that's not the case.
And is it not the infrastructure and the surrounding areas also that adds on to the value of these neighborhoods like GK1, Vasant Vihar? How about like they have better shopping complexes or the infrastructure that is there?
So okay, that's a very important point. You said it correctly, but sometimes these factors add positively and negatively both.
Okay.
For example, if we are wanting to name a colony, a classic example, let's say Defense Colony versus GK1. They are, let's say, just a kilometer away from each other per se.
Yes.
But you put it rightly, due to these infrastructure of the colonies itself, the
Mm-hmm.
pricing gets affected. You would be surprised to know between a GK1 and Defense Colony, there's a difference of 50 to 60%.
50,
50 to
60%.
60%, which
Okay.
a general person won't know. The reason again is that exactly due to the colony infrastructure. When you see GK1 versus Defense Colony, you would have large number of parks, wider service lane, wider roads. After every 10 to 15 house, you see a break. On the contrary, GK1, there would be lanes which you would have 50 houses at
Lined
a
up
stretch.
houses.
So all these plus, same thing, that if there are more number of schools in a colony, or there are more number of parks. So all these factors lead to a pricing and demand of a colony.
During this entire buying process that you have, I mean, you have been a part of this industry for many years. What is the most invisible cost that people, usually don't take care of, and which comes up at the final stage and gives a shock to the buyer, and which they don't really account for?
So I will tell you why I'm laughing. The most invisible part of this is your wife's or your family's aspirations of doing that house. That is one cost which you really cannot imagine. You think as a male member, oh, ये घर तो 10-15-20 लाख में मैं इसको ठीक ठाक कर लूंगा. And then starts, your family's aspirations comes into picture. And so, because see, let me tell you, entire Delhi, for that matter, not even South Delhi, it's a pretty organized market. So, on a technical grounds, answering your question, all the elements, stamp duty, brokerage, all these things are very, very fixed elements. You really don't feel any surprise on that part. But one thing which is, 100% sure, which is bound to happen, your thinking about this interiors, etc. I'm in process of renovating my own home. I bought a new
Is it?
flat.
Hmm.
So, and one
You
cannot
can share a
imagine.
live
Yeah, so,
example.
so I'm 100% feeding a live example. One budget's X, but then, and the top of it, the total Indian attitude mentality, घर एक बार बनना
बनना
है.
है.
अंडरलाइंग स्टेटमेंट, घर एक बार बनना है. वाइफ बोलेगी ये बस एक बार ही तो होना है, बस ये एक बार तो, बट वो एक बार एड ऑन होते
That
होते
एक बार
होते where it
cost.
leads to. So I understand your question was technical, but my answer to this is that you really cannot, one thing you have to budget or you still cannot budget is, and one more part I would like to add to it. On a technical ground, a person should do his planning a little better, because one more very important thing which we have observed, and this is something very serious, that when one person starts building a house, basically, so the most, a different factor is that till the time your house completion is about to come, okay, uh, a person gets drained, both emotionally, financially,
Hmm.
psychologically, because you must have heard hundreds of stories as a layman also, कि लास्ट के 3-4 महीने में,
हाँ,
इट
वो
इट
एक आई
इट
गेस
इट
वो
जस्ट गेट्स अ,
फटीग आ जाता है
हाँ, मतलब
पूरा
फटीग,
प्रोसेस
और वो
का.
मतलब अ पर्सन गेट्स पैरानॉइड अबाउट इट कि बस मुझे
Hmm.
अब घर में शिफ्ट होना है.
हाँ.
एंड द मोस्ट, आई वुड से द चैलेंजिंग पार्ट ऑफ इट इज दैट जो काम लास्ट 3-4 महीने में आपके घर में होना है, वो ही
वो
सबसे
सबसे
ज्यादा दिखना
इम्पोर्टेंट.
है. So, if you have done a very good structure, yes, you should do that. But if your budgeting in the last, if for that last is not correct, then, you put it rightly, you really get fatigued in multiple manners. So, but the summary to answer to your question is, expectation over interiors is something you really cannot budget for, uh, and you really can't.
So we have seen that people, everyone assume that South Delhi is always in an is an appreciating region or a neighborhood. So is there any particular pocket or a neighborhood that has not appreciated as much as the entire South Delhi, or maybe even have dropped in the value over the years? Is it there any?
So basically, the thing is, you really cannot say that values have dropped, but yes, there have been shifts in the market. Uh, uh, I don't know how can I explain, but there are new equilibriums which are getting established. So if we start naming colonies, for example,
Hmm.
so earlier there was a, let's say, a very huge difference in colonies like, let's say, Hoskas Enclave and Vasant Vihar. So there was a significant price difference. But now with see, one good thing about South Delhi is it's 95% end user driven market. So yes, you put it rightly. It's a very, very stable boat. And unlike, for example, Gurgaon, which in last 4-5 years maybe have rocketed by, let's say, 30-40%, South Delhi may not have on that levels, because already we were on a very, very high capital base
Hmm.
versus Gurgaon. So for example, Gurgaon used to operate, let's say, 1 to 1.5 lakh rupees a square yard. South Delhi always used to be, let's say, six and a half. So being due to a higher capital base, it hasn't increased by that, but it's a stable thing because 95% is end user based market. uh, New equilibriums are getting established. For example, the difference between colonies, even like Hoskas Enclave, SDA versus Vasant Vihar, that difference over last 6 7 years has been tapering a lot. And if you ask the reason for it,
Huh.
because all these colonies have their now own inherent demand. For example, if somebody's kids are studying in the school or infrastructure nearby, for him a upgrade from Green Park to Hoskas Enclave could be a equal upgrade, and he may not be thinking of moving straight away to Vasant Vihar. So the demand per se in South Delhi is so buoyant that yes, new equilibriums are getting established. To answer the second part of question, that whether some colony per se has kind of not appreciated so much. So yes, you can generalize in a way, maybe colonies like South X1 etc., or some colonies which are surrounded by villages etc. So those colonies haven't appreciated that much per se.
But nothing has dropped as such of the
No, no,
value.
no, no, no. So typically, I think not just South Delhi, even anything in Delhi address in last 7 8 years hasn't dropped at all per se.
So in Delhi, we have a very prime and a very powerful address, Lutyens Bungalow Zone. So there are many hard and strict rules around LBZ that you don't like you're not I don't know how much you can redevelop it, what level of construction or infrastructure you can build on this in this restricted area. Do you think this scarcity actually makes the place a very premium, or it's just eroding the value that we might able to generate?
The one way of answering this question is that these colonies are more like two-seater cars.
Acha.
Okay, so you have a niche buyer for these colonies, but the supply is so scarce that, let's say in LBZ, uh, transactions happen maybe once in 2 years 3 years, and there are so many successful ventures which have happened over a period of time. And still, the good thing about South Delhi or LBZ is it's all quite aspirational. So let's say a owner of, I'm just giving a very live example because we when the transaction was happening, so we saw that transaction happening. So if Paytm was becoming successful, so the first thing what the owner did was moving from GK1 enclave and straight away to golf links. So the point I'm trying to put forward is that the supply side is almost zero, and there's a lot of money, wealth which is getting created year on year basis. So people have so much aspiration. I wouldn't like to name one of the biggest business group houses or multiple business group houses still want to buy houses in LBZ, but I will say it's completely zero availability. So yes, they are restricted constructions. There's no doubt about it. But even then, it has some very what I would say is that this is something which is it's a crowned properties.
So you don't see any value erosion happening?
No, no, not at all. Not at all. Not at all. Yes, but also if you compare, let's say, golf links versus Jorbag, so there could be a chance that yes, Jorbag, because you can build completely 4 floors, etc.
Okay.
So comparatively, the increment would have been little more in golf links versus Jorbag, but still sorry, golf links has its own aspiration value. So
Mhm.
erosion we don't foresee at all. This is all becoming more like central London. These are Tony colonies with a marquee properties. So aspirations are too much, supply is zero. So we don't see that anything, the value would go down at all.
So talking about these high value deals, so you have been a part of these transactions. So can you just walk us through what happens in these, 100 and 200 crores kind of transactions? What happens inside the room? What makes the deal? What can break the deal? How's the environment and the energy inside the room? Can you just give a live walk around?
So very interesting again. These transactions what you're mentioning, any 100 crore plus transactions, um, you would be surprised to know these transactions are much more easier to attend to.
Easier?
Yeah,
Okay.
much more easier to attain to in comparison to something which is 5-10 crores, because of the fact that the person who is buying, he has very few options to buy,
अच्छा हाँ.
clubbed with clear title properties, etc., etc. So these transactions means, you say that, what would be happening inside the room, for example. The most amazing part of these transactions is the discussions are financial discussions are just purely 10 minutes, not more than that, because the whole discussion is so it becomes too more like Bollywood. But frankly, we have been part of quite a few transactions where a buyer said कि आप मुझसे अगर आप मुझसे 10 करोड़ रुपए ऊपर भी मांगते तो मैं आपको दे देता, and
अच्छा.
the
This
seller
actually
said,
happens.
yeah, this actually happens, this
Okay.
actually happens. So we did a transaction between an industrialist and who was the buyer, and there was somebody, the Bombay based seller. So they gelled very well in the first meeting. So it was all just normal talks, no commercial discussions. Post the transaction got completed, so seller's first statement was that Mr. Arora, आपका nature मुझे इतना अच्छा लगा कि I would have even sold you the house for even 5-10 crore less. And he said, sir, if you would ask me 10 crore more, then I would have easily given to it. And that's the most interesting part of these 100 crore plus transactions. So all the spade
So,
work.
but cutting you in between, don't you think ये जो बीच का gap था, you could have bridged that gap in between?
Nothing. So we never we never come into it. For us, that happening of transaction is most important. So let's be very selfish about it. Yes, because we make it smooth and we make it gracious. That's what our role is, and that's the interesting part of it. But it's very, specifically these 100 crore plus transactions, very smooth functioning.
So you mentioned about Gurgaon. So talking about Gurgaon, like we have seen luxury and very premium apartments coming up in Gurgaon. Do you think that is a threat to South Delhi in terms of aspirational residences?
Uh, uh, to some extent, what I would say is that yes, people. I would like to answer in two ways. One, that threat part, I don't see that it's a threat because every place has its own demand. So
Hmm.
people, for example, people, if somebody feels that South Delhi versus Gurgaon, so it is not the exact right comparison. Yes, with places like Camellias, Dahlias. See, one thing South Delhi has a genuine scarcity is community living, and that's where Gurgaon excels by leaps and bounds. You cannot compare. And with this whole, single nuclear families coming up, yes, that is something more secure, more lifestyle driven. I'm talking about the Gurgaon factor of it.
Mhm.
Having said that, you really cannot compare two geographies because South Delhi, anyways, has a short supply. We have seen not many cases but few cases where people move from South Delhi bungalows to Gurgaon, and later on, due to their social circle, their own comfort zone, people moved back. Have seen cases, very very decorated people, move to Noida, just on the start of Noida,
Okay.
maybe a little ahead of sector 15A, but they came back to places, back to South Delhi, because their whole social circle, whole community was around. But to answer your question, both are different geographies, both have their own intrinsic value. Saying that whether Gurgaon is a threat to South Delhi, no, not at all, because they have their own demand. But yes, to s- to assume whether Gurgaon as an area is coming up more prominently, yes, pockets of Noida and Gurgaon, because they have their own land patch. So definitely they would excel more, or would be having a more lifestyle driven decisions, which South Delhi has a limit to.
So you deal in transactions involving legacy and family inherited properties. So do you see any families, any rivalry between siblings happening during the inheriting of the property or the family politics happening? Do you see these things happen, and how do you move around these?
So it's something very very interesting. The thing is, you really cannot imagine the kind of drama it happens. And actually, why are to anyone we tell that our this whole thing is our whole profession is completely non monotonous, because every day you see something new.
Something exciting.
And I can quote you hundreds of examples, though it doesn't look nice to say, but even with even within a transaction, you know, son-in-law bringing a transaction to us and saying, sir, मेरे को इतना cut आप दे देना, basically.
Okay.
And plus, you put it rightly, Saudi typically is now, these are all 60-year-old colonies. So
Hmm.
at least three generations have passed on. Anywhere in South Delhi and Lutyens Delhi, the third generation is now into play. So there are multiple legal heirs, and means even within family members, you really cannot imagine the amount of rivalry would be a negative word, but yes, that people have that very underlying currents and issues. Uh, in a single transaction, we would have been dealing with people in multiple compartments. So
Hmm.
yeah, so you would see that there are 10 people who are not seeing within themselves eye to eye. Basically, we are getting
Talk with
document
one.
signed, yeah, document signed in one room, document two in one room.
Okay. Proper Bollywood
For
style
100, and actually it's 100
SOP.
100% Bollywood style. You really see that, yes, there's a complete drama which comes up. And that's why also, couple of transactions take even year and a half to, people don't feel it, but there's a lot of backdrop working which happens in, close circles, wherein to get these all transactions through. So you put it up rightly, there's a lot of things which are involved. And for that matter, still you see, if you walk any colony in South Delhi, you would see still, there are at least 20-30% houses which are just in a dilapidated form, nothing happening, because just that, the
Because of
families, yeah,
family
the family is
issues.
not on board. They don't come on same page a lot of times.
And I don't see कि ऐसा कुछ solution that you can bring it, being a advisor or something
No,
that you
no,
can
no, no,
bring.
no. We bring solutions.
अच्छा, you do that.
Yeah, yeah. So somewhere we are, somewhere we are playing a negotiator. Somewhere we are playing a psychiatrist. Somewhere we are playing a psychologist. Somewhere playing a doctor. So there's a lot of fun.
Everything,
Yeah.
whatever
So
need is.
when you are through with this transaction, and then you start pre-imagining or reimagining the transaction, that's the most fun part of it, that what all happened this in this journey. So there's and in any such transactions, there's a lot of value which a advisor brings on table. uh, Unfortunately, in our country, people don't value a advisor's role. It is very underplayed. But typically, if I from my side want to summarize it, actually, if I put it in one line, just start imagining from a manner that one is dealing with human emotions. And I think on this earth, the most unexpected thing is a human personality, that what would happen next. But we handle these. And the way I would sum up this answer is that an advisor's role in any transaction is very, very important.
So while doing these transactions, did you had a deal that you find it very smooth to do? Deal सब कुछ हो गया, everything closed. Then suddenly something came up कि अच्छा ये तो पता ही नहीं था ये कैसे हो गया. Some issues happened
Uh,
maybe.
See, very few, maybe one or two, because these deals in itself take a lot of time.
Hmm.
So you really s- don't see very hidden factors coming up. Yes, in one or two transactions, it has happened that again, not to
कुछ miss
say,
out हो
yeah,
गया.
no, not miss out. You would see very funny factors. You may would have come across forged wills. That's
अच्छा,
again, maybe I don't know
ये
whether
भी
the
पूरा
right
बॉलीवुड स्टाइल है.
नहीं, I don't know whether the right platform to discuss or not. But लोगों की forged wills होती हैं, या लोगों ने अपना एक भाई बहन ही छुपा दिया, मतलब
अच्छा,
कि
is it?
हाँ, मतलब कि कोई सर्वाइविंग मेंबर सर्टिफिकेट बन रहा है, और
Okay.
उसमें वो डिक्लेयर ही नहीं किया, बिकॉज ही पास्ड अवे लॉन्ग टाइम बैक, और उनके लीगल एयर्स को वो कुछ देना नहीं चाहते थे, तो इसलिए उसी को पूरा, मतलब they have completely ignored that point at all.
Okay.
So yes, you see these parts coming up, and but it's like that, yes, just 1 in 10 cases, because all these transactions take so much time that you really don't miss out on these things, generally.
Okay. So, while discussing, so what are there any two or three points or documents that one can, टेक अ नोट ऑन कि ये 2-3 चीज़ें कर लें या ये 2-3 स्टेप्स अगर हम कर लेते हैं सो दैट वी कैन सेफगार्ड द एंटायर बाइंग मे बी फ्रॉम द बायर्स पर्सपेक्टिव और फ्रॉम द सेलर्स पर्सपेक्टिव?
Anurag, I would like to answer this question in a little different manner. कि अगर मैं इसको इस तरह से रीफ्रेम करूं आपके क्वेश्चन को,
हुँ।
कि एक बायर को किस चीज़ का जनरली ध्यान रखना चाहिए,
हाँ,
मान लीजिए, मतलब
परफेक्टली स
अगर
हाँ,
हम
हाँ।
हाँ उस पर्सपेक्टिव से इस बात को करें,
राइट, राइट।
तो द आंसर इज completely different. The answer is that do lot of reference checks. People don't do reference checks. People
हुँ,
don't do their homework. They don't sometimes see कि आज अगर किसी सिर्फ ब्रोकर ने बोल दिया कि ये बिल्डर अच्छा है,
हुँ।
उसके बाद एक अगर होमवर्क करना चाहे कोई आदमी, तो बड़े आराम से रेफरेंस चेक कर सकता है उस बिल्डर के बारे में।
कैसे कर सकते हैं जैसे?
बहुत सिंपल है। आप चाहे आप उस ब्रोकर से ही बोलो, यू टेल योर एडवाइजर ओनली कि गिव मी एटलीस्ट 5 to 7 ओनर्स नंबर्स
ओके,
whom this builder has made houses for.
ओके,
And let me tell you, this is a golden rule. If one does just this simple check, okay, and then speaks to those owners, because that's a broker's role. अगर आपने मांगा है तो उसको देना पड़ेगा।
हुँ, हुँ।
अगर वो देगा और उन 4-5 लोगों से भी बात कर ली, because those people, if they have if they have had a good journey, they would be very boastful about it. If they have had issues in terms of construction, etc., etc., they would again be very, very vocal about it,
राइट,
basically. So, one is reference checks. Then sometimes people, go in for cheaper options. For example, hire a good lawyer, hire a good consultant. For example, if somebody is getting a housemaid, hire a good structural engineer. The thing is, now there's so much information and so much professional advice easily available, but but the unfortunate or challenging part of our country, so to say, is that people don't value advisors. And I'm not talking
राइट।
just the brokerage part of it.
हुँ, हुँ।
I'm not talking just the advisors part of it. पीपल अगर बिल्डिंग बन रही है तो लोग ये नहीं है कि हम एक एडिशनल स्ट्रक्चर इंजीनियर हायर कर लें, एक एडिशनल पीएमसी हायर कर लें. सो पीपल, इट्स एक्चुअली द वे आई वुड समराइज इज पेनी वाइज पाउंड फुलिश. So you have to be very, very more informed, and it's all easily available in the market, easily, at a very minimalistic cost. But it's like a buyer's DNA has to change to some extent, that a trust with the advisor clubbed with his own homework is the key, is what I would like to say.
And any particular documents that they should check or verify or vet?
These are 50, 60-year-old legacies.
हुँ, हुँ।
So you, if on this platform also I tell you 5 or 10 documents, it
डज़न्ट
doesn't
मेक
make sense.
सेंस।
Yeah, but it is just about get a good lawyer and let
उसको
the
अपना काम
professional.
करने दो।
हाँ exactly.
तुम
आपने
आराम से
बिल्कुल ठीक
बैठो।
हाँ exactly. Let the professional do their own work. And I would further like to add, अगर आप एक लॉयर के बारे में भी चेक कर रहे हो, तो उसके बारे में भी so much friends and family information आपको available हो जाती है. So
हुँ, हुँ।
go with those recognized people instead of cutting on those cost.
So these days we have seen a lot of content happening from real estate side. People have been putting out with very creative ideas. बहुत सारा reels, videos, social media पे आता है. So does these things actually generate business? Do they move things or are these activities just people are doing just to stay relevant in the social media?
So, nahin. So, answering your question, yes, it's very relevant. Things are
Hmm.
changing. Things are changing rapidly. So, one thing is very sure, what we are also foreseeing on ground, the whole marketing methodology would change, and it would change very fast. There would be a lot of AI, Google, etc., which is already there, but इसकी speed बहुत different होगी. Secondly, what I would like to say is कि the interesting thing about the social media is the decision maker may not be the person who is influenced by social media,
अच्छा,
but
हाँ.
decision influencer could be. So in a desi bhasha agar hum baat kare, so we have seen live cases wherein, let's say, the house buyer, let's say there's a father or there's a father-in-law. So eventually decision paisa to unhone dena hai,
Hmm.
but let's say a daughter-in-law, a wife, उन्होंने कुछ सोशल मीडिया पे देखा तो ये बहुत अच्छे वीडियोस आते हैं जी. So then we have genuinely came across customers who have come to us through these influencers, basically. So influencers means कि घर का कोई और फैमिली मेंबर है जिसने बहुत अट्रैक्टिव वीडियोस देखे, So the answer to your question is that yes, this whole marketing thing, and also you need to understand that the category of buyers is changing. When with the even the Gen Zs, so to say, they being the major money earners, or couples who are wanting to buy a house.
Okay.
So for all of them, this social media will definitely make difference, and the whole traditional way will definitely get broken, and the whole buying methodology in terms of marketing will create a difference. There's no doubt about it.
So do you see a shift in the buyer demographic also happening? जैसे अभी आपने just mention किया कि what a actual buyer of a South Delhi property or a South Delhi house looks like, कि पहले एक particular set of age के होते थे, maybe 50 or 60 years old, and अब they are much a younger generation.
See, good thing what has happened is that now एक टाइम था, आज से 6-7 साल पहले एक टाइम आ गया था that everybody used to feel that real estate is not the right, or may not be the right investment.
हाँ.
But post COVID, there has been a scenario when people have again started appreciating own space, अपना खुद का घर, अपनी खुद की जगह बेसिकली.
Right.
सो वो स्पेस रिक्वायरमेंट, और फिर ऑन ग्राउंड अगर आप देखोगे, there's so much still happening, work from home, etc., etc.
Hmm.
So yes, you put it rightly that there's a lot of generational shift which is happening. So when we are addressing to the clients, so you would find people in their 35 to 45 age bracket also. नहीं तो पहले हमेशा टिपिकली बोला जाता था कि आदमी अपना घर 50 प्लस में खरीदता है, बेसिकली जो
Right.
जो एक नया घर, मतलब न्यू अपने पैसों से जो घर खरीदता है.
Hmm.
But now there's a shift. We see that yes, a lot of this age bracket of 35 to 45 are the home buyers, and
Right.
their approach also is very different than the traditional way of decision making. They are much more informed. They want to
Okay.
understand more features. They want to understand that how the colony security, safety. So yes, what you're saying is that shift is happening very rapidly, and we see that this was again change very keep changing very rapidly.
Okay. So can you just pinpoint two, three changes that has happened, or maybe not the changes, the preferences of the buyers has evolved for the past 10 years की let's say 10 साल पहले ये दो तीन चीज़ें preference होती थी while buying a house, and अब वो दो तीन चीज़ें कुछ और है. Is there anything sort of happened?
So maybe maybe the difference is in a smaller way. To answer your question, people have started now giving very much weightage to 3-4 different factors जो शायद पहले नहीं हुआ करते थे.
Okay.
One, geography. By geography, I mean कि time to commute
अच्छा.
बेसिकली. तो
Office to
लोग
work.
ऑफिस टू वर्क एक्सेट्रा. तो अब इस फैक्टर को लोग बहुत ध्यान देते हैं. प्लस
Okay.
जो हम कहते हैं देसी भाषा में प्रेफरेंशियल लोकेशन, PLCs. सो
Okay.
नाउ पीपल आर वांटिंग टू स्पेंड मोर ऑन प्रेफरेंशियल लोकेशंस. It's a corner,
जैसे
it's a
okay.
corner, it's a park facing, it's a wide road,
Okay.
पीछे पार्क है, आगे पार्क है, सर्विस लेन कितनी बड़ी है. सो पीपल आर नाउ मच मोर टेकिंग अ मच मोर इन्फॉर्म्ड डिसीजन, और जब वो अपना डिसीजन लेते भी हैं, तो टू स्पेंड दैट एक्स्ट्रा करोड़ on a good location. So people are becoming more and more informed and wary about it. हमें
Okay.
ऐसा लगता है कि आज से 10 साल पहले the money part of it, the value part of it was the main, let's say 70-80% driving factor. अब आज हमें लगता है कि that 70-80% is just not the money part of it. It's all these other factors, infrastructure, nearness to schools, parks, so all these factors have now started playing little more active
Important.
role into it. So yes, there's a definitely a shift in the thinking perspective of the buyer today.
So if in case let's say I want to reconstruct my home or maybe buy a floor in a South Delhi, how should I go about selecting a builder की मतलब builder selection process कैसा होना चाहिए कि good builder, how to pinpoint builders की क्या अच्छे points हमें देखने चाहिए?
So, okay, so we feel that we have kind of cracked this code. And for any customer who is wanting to make his house or wants to buy a floor or a
अच्छा.
house through a builder, from a builder. So, how does one select a builder? So, the
हम्म.
parameters, अगर आप ध्यान से सोचो, तो they are very simple. You just give weightage to 6-7 factors. One, his age in business. कितने टाइम से वो बिजनेस कर रहा है, कितनी बिल्डिंग्स बना चुका है,
हम्म.
उस पर्टिकुलर एरिया डेमोग्राफिक्स में उसकी कितनी प्रेजेंस है. प्लस एक चीज़ जो मैंने पहले भी बोली है, आई एम रिपीटिंग, उसके कस्टमर्स जिन्होंने उनसे घर लिया है, उनका क्या रिकॉल है, कितने टाइम में बिल्डिंग बना देता है. सो इफ वन डज ऑल दीज होमवर्क्स वेल, basically try to get little more information. So actually it's easy, very easy, but people don't do their homework. So to select a builder, it's not that difficult a task. If you follow this 6 7 steps, you can definitely be landing into a good home.
Or might reach out to you directly.
That would have been too much marketing on your
Ah,
channel.
yes. Maybe we have seen, like, I don't know why there's a perception of, if you see, I mean, don't take it that way, but usually if you see na कि brokers or real estate advisors को ना एक kind of a not exactly negative character, but towards on the not so good side एक portray करा हुआ है. Maybe because of the movies or जो भी ऐसे visualization होता है. So why is that कि एक image उनका ऐसा बन गया है. आई नो कि अभी ऐसा नहीं है, बट ब्रॉडली स्पीकिंग पीपल यूजुअली ट्राई टू अवॉइड एडवाइजर्स एज मच एज दे कैन.
देखो, चैनल पे
तो
बुला के और बेइज्जती करने वाला तरीका तो ठीक है नहीं.
आई टोल्ड यू नॉट.
but no, no, but I completely understand.
बट
जैसे
दिस इज द ब्रॉडर पर्सपेक्टिव दैट
नहीं नहीं,
पीपल
मैं आपकी बात
सी.
से एग्री करता हूँ, और मैं जैसे एक एग्जांपल बता रहा हूँ आपको, मैं डिफरेंट एग्जांपल से कोरिलेट करता हूँ कि आज ज्वेलरी एज एन इंडस्ट्री, मतलब आज आप ज्वेलर कोई आपको 22 कैरेट गोल्ड भी दे रहा है तो आज परसेप्शन ये हो गई है कि नहीं, कुछ ना कुछ इशू है. सो सम इंडस्ट्रीज आर परसीव्ड दैट वे, चाहे ज्वेलर हो चाहे बिल्डर हो. तो इसके ना 2 3 अलग अलग रीजंस है. एक तो समहाउ हमारा जो ह्यूमन मेंटालिटी है, नेगेटिव एग्जाम्पल्स गेट एम्पलीफाइड अ लॉट बेसिकली. सो आज मान लो किसी के साथ एक किसी पर्टिकुलर ब्रोकर या बिल्डर से गलत एक्सपीरियंस हुआ. मैं इसको बहुत जनरली अपने कस्टमर्स को भी बहुत बोलता हूँ इन सम मैनर, कि जो एक गली में 10 बिल्डिंग बनी, उनका कोई जिक्र नहीं होता. अगर एक बिल्डिंग साल 2 साल डिले हो गई, तो वो दैट बिकम्स द टॉक ऑफ द टाउन, टॉक ऑफ द पार्क, मॉर्निंग, इवनिंग, किटीज एटसेट्रा. सो पहली बात, दैट परसेप्शन ऑफ द इंडस्ट्री इज स्लाइटली रॉन्ग. It is not that negative the way the whole negative examples get amplified more. Point one. Secondly, what a shift is happening is that there are lot more I would say कि प्रोफेशनल लोग. एक तो देखो, इस इंडस्ट्री की प्रॉब्लम है दैट देयर इज नो बैरियर टू एंट्री. कल
राइट.
अनुराग के पास अगर 2 करोड़ रुपए हैं और वो कल से बिल्डिंग चालू करना चाहे, तो उसको कोई बैरियर एंट्री, लाइसेंस, अनलाइक internationally you need licenses, you need to fill your exams, etc. So but having said that, the market is moving rapidly with so much information available in the market, and with now the buyer also not just moving ahead on the reference based working. So people understand more about the एडवाइज़र, उनके बारे में चेक करते हैं, ऑनलाइन चेक करते हैं, नेगेटिव फीडबैक्स, पॉजिटिव फीडबैक्स चेक करते हैं. सो द वे आई वुड लाइक टू समराइज इज दैट येस, इंडस्ट्री इज इन दैट शिफ्ट मोड, एंड इन टाइम्स टू कम इट इज़ चेंजिंग इन अ वेरी वेरी इन्फॉर्म्ड मैनर. एंड आप भी देखोगे तो ऑन अ नॉर्मल लेवल ऑल्सो द इंडस्ट्री हैज़ बिकम सो मच कैपिटल इंटेंसिव. आज 10 10 20 20 करोड़ की ट्रांजेक्शन होना बहुत मामूली बात है. सो इसलिए द काइंड ऑफ advisors and brokers also who are in the market, that shift is happening very very rapidly.
So your answer is pretty well. I thought how you would be taking it. So in the past 5 7 years, we have seen property appreciation happening for, like, I guess 6 7 years से एक upward direction में जा रहा है. So do you see the trend happening for the next 5 10 years also, or are we expecting a bubble or a crash of some pricing or a correction, if it's a correct word? How do you see the pricing going for the next 5 years?
So basically, Anurag, there are two different parts of it. One, that yes, if we talk about micro market, so let's say if we talk about South Delhi. So
Hmm.
South Delhi, one doesn't see that it's a bubble. So it's a very very general question. Now in every talks it is because post COVID, since last 7 8 years, and it's not something which is in South Delhi. It's present in the country. In fact, it's a world over phenomenon that real estate has been seeing a upward trend. One, the thing is that yes, there was a real estate cycle which was due, let's say pre-COVID also, since last pre-COVID 1 decade. So there was nothing happening in real estate. But post COVID, there has been a one way appreciation across. Whether it's a bubble, no. In micro markets, not. But yes, in markets where there's an oversupply. For example, if let's say in Gurgaon, some sector towards Manesar, where suddenly a builder has announced 500 flats and it's an investor-based market, there definitely from now onwards we see that yes, the prices would kind of stable. But whether it's a bubble which would burst, no, it will not, because the shift post COVID, what has happened is that everybody talks about home, means everybody wants to own a
Own a
home.
home.
They don't want to, generally people, or younger generation always felt, had started feeling that no, the rentals are the right approach, or that is a more justified financial call. But now over a period of last 6 7 years, even people want to buy their own home. So yes, it's not a bubble, there are a lot of end users in the market. But yes, market to market basis where there would be an oversupply, from here onwards we see that in those markets there would be let's say a stability. Whether there's a correction or not, it would also depend upon many other economic factors.
Okay.
So that's the way it is. So but yes, I don't feel that it's a bubble about to be bust.
So it was wonderful to have you, Mr. Dipesh. We had a very nice conversation around South Delhi and real estate. काफी कुछ eye opening facts बताया आपने. So thank you for taking out time.
Thanks Anurag, it has been wonderful interacting with you.
I
Great
think we
interacting with
we
you.
had a good
Yeah, yeah.
episode.
Great. Thanks
Yeah,
Anurag.
thank you.
Thanks, and thanks to your team as well.